Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, it's Van Diesel back in the Card 5 Vanguard deck profile. So because George will like, comment, subscribe, and let's start, shall we? This time we're covering set 9 for Griphogila for Stoicheia. It was supposed to originally be my favorite Griphogila deck because it has the way to revive your rear guards. That way, meaning you can spam more Dragontree markers out very quickly. I like how that was literally the first reason why I went to Stoicheia first. Like, that is the only reason why I built the Stoicheia deck first, because I thought about that plan the second I read what Griphogila and Griphogila does. But turns out that Keto ended up being my favorite, but this is still my close second because of some bullshit it can do that I haven't tested out yet, but I'm pretty sure it's super broken. So let's go and get this deck started, shall we? And you can see what I mean by that. First up today, we have our starter in Griphogila. So great 0 boost, 5k shield, 6k base. You can have a total of 5 cards in your ride deck made of this card, 3 calamity cards, and Overtrigger, being the most unique starter so far, having a unique ride ability. And then you use Vanguard, this unit gets plus 2k for each calamity card and its different card name in your soul. So that's great. So currently that's a total of 12k that it could possibly have. And then they make more calamity cards and they give you a reason to stay on Griphogila that he could possibly be at 14, then 16, etc. All around, pretty solid skill. And then his last ability is Auto Vanguard. At the beginning of your main phase, choose a calamity card from your ride deck. You may put it to your soul. And then you can put 3 calamity cards from your soul that were in the ride deck back into the ride deck face up. And then you search your hand or deck for up to 1 Dragontree of a Eclectic Decimation, Griphogila. Write it as stand. So if you search your deck, you shuffle it. And then if you wrote a card, you choose 2 of your rear guards and put Dragontree markers on each of them. All around, solid skill, because that means you can solely set up your soul, not have to discard for ride deck, which is great, especially in a deck that wants to be defensive because it wants to stall out to the very end game. So being able to, consistently keep hand cards, even if it's only 3, can make a big difference in the game. And then get a superior ride from either hand or deck, depending if you still have copies left in deck or not, is great. And then also being able to be the only card currently that creates Dragontree markers that can go on top of other Dragontree markers is amazing, because currently Stoicheia is the one and only deck in Griphogila of all the nations that can actually pull off double Dragontree markers. How often can it do it? I have no idea, because personally I have not tested it out, because that involves me running a card I refuse to run. But hey, it's possible. I know it is. It's just a matter of if you're lucky enough to pull it off, or if you're skilled enough to pull it off. Either way, solid skill though. I like to start a lot. It gives a lot of unique feeling to starters for once, so solid Griphogila. Then we have our rest of the ride line. We have 3 copies, or 1 of each, of Looming Demise, Minutious Metamorphosis, and the Start of the End. All of them are normal orders with the same skill, just different grades. And that is Counterboss 1, you choose up to 1 calamity card from your deck, reveal, put it to hand, shuffle your deck. Okay, none of them are really used in the main deck because it's just a CB1 to search themselves, and considering what the rest of the main deck can do, it's not really worth putting a card in there that's a CB1 just to get a deck card out, when there's stuff that revives stuff, get you more Dragontree markers, add more pressure, or kill your opponent's rear guards and put more pressure on them in terms of guarding power and having to commit more board. So, you can run these in the main deck. I don't suggest it, but their arts are cool. You can use either these arts or the ones from set 8 or any other ones they make, but I choose to use these arts because it came up with the ride line. And you can put them into soul for Griphogila skill in any order. It's really up to you on that one, but I always like to go 1, 2, 3 just because, ride line rules. Then we have our 5 Dragontree markers. This is the only deck where I could technically recommend you running 7 or 8, because it is possible to get 8 on board, just really rare. 6 is possible. Like, 6 is almost guaranteed. 7 is a 50-50 bet. And then 8 is, if you pull off 8, go to Vegas, go buy a lottery ticket, put the numbers 15, 17, 85, 34, and 36 on it, and then sit back and watch as you win thousands upon millions of dollars. Anyways, the Dragontree marker. During your turn, if you have Vanguard, Dragontree, or Mesquez in its card name, all your units on the circles get plus 5k power, which is great. Add additional numbers to the rear guards, meaning they have a little bit more pressure on your opponent, and that makes their life a little bit harder because you can just continuously pressure the opponent out while they can kind of do nothing to stop you. Especially when you're kind of swinging with the Vanguard for double critical. So solid card. It can also boost up the Vanguard if you manage to put it on the Vanguard circle. Though then again, there's no current way to put it on the Vanguard circle yet, but I know Bushy's going to find a way to prove me wrong on that. And then we have Overtrigger, which is Source Dragon Deity of Blessings, Blessfavor. Grades of boost, 50k shield, 5k power. Overtrigger, you mail him 1 Overtrigger in your deck. Whenever revealed as a trigger, move that card, draw a card, choose one of your units, it gets plus 1 for the turn. In a village draw check, activate its effect, which is you get to draw a card, choose one of your units, it gets plus 1 crit for the turn. All your form gets plus 10. And then if you're damaged on the same number of cards of your opponents or more, choose a card from your damage zone and heal it. AKA, everything bagel. Get 2 free draws, someone gets a million, you get a front trigger, if someone gets a crit, and you get a heal out of it. There's literally No minus to this card. The only way you can minus is if you deck yourself out from this because it's a free 2 draws. But if you get to the point where you can abuse this thing from Griphogila's skill, you have definitely won, or at least made it so that your opponent's going to have one a hell of a time trying to beat you in the last endgame because they're probably barely alive considering they've been struggling to keep up with you this entire round, especially what's coming after the drive check. So all around, Blessfavor is a pretty solid overtrigger. I must say this is my least favorite one having in the Riot deck not because it's the worst one. In my opinion, it's the second best one. My issue with it is I always like drive checking this thing early because this is one of the few overtriggers you can drive check early and it will set you up for a massive advantage. So solid one of Blessfavor. Saw just a good card, and that's the overtrigger I choose to run. If you want to run a bar, go ahead, but I feel like this one's better. Then we have our normal triggers. First up, we have 3 front triggers and Frenzied Heiress. Great 0 boost, 15k shield, 4k power, continues guard token. If your opponent's Vanguard, it's a great 3 guard, because plus 5k shield, which is great. So 20k shield, an extra 10k to farm row, meaning the rear guards have a little bit more pressure. And this is one of the decks where you do want to add more pressure, because there's a way to get double criticals on your units. So being able to add fronts is pretty nice as well. So solid 3 up for the 20k shield, and again, more pressure on front. A total of 8 draws. First, we have 4 copies of Lost Child of Attachment. Crit 0 boost, 5k shield, 5k base. You can really make this any draw. I chose to make it this one because it's been a long time since I've seen her, and I was like, I feel bad, and she kind of fits the theme of the deck, so let's run her, because again, you want to have as much guarding power as possible to pull off Blessfavor's ability, so cool, 8 draws, with this being 4 of them, the other 4 being obviously Serene, Maiden, and Lena. Crit 0 boost, 5k shield, 4k base, continues guard circle. Every opponent's Vanguard trigger 3 plus 5k shield. Still disappointed that draws had to have the same exact copy and pasted skill as front triggers did, but hey, it's still a decent 10k shield, helps increase guarding power, makes it more likely that you're going to live to your next turn, and also just increases your hand cards by being a draw trigger. So solid 8 draws. You can run a crits if you want to, but considering the Vanguard already has extra crits, and like I said, you do want to stall for Blessfavor, you don't really need to, especially because again, you have rear guards that can get extra crits, so the crits would kind of only be there just to guarantee you have crits on board, but I'd rather have the guaranteed stall factor instead. So 8 draws, 3 front, and then we have a regular 4 heals and Elegy Pixy, aka the thing I thought was a dragon for the longest time, until I finally saw her face at like around set 6 time. Anyways, crit 0 boost, 15k shield, 5k power, standard heal, not too bad about it. I don't really like the effect heals. In my opinion, they're too situational, because if their abilities don't go off, they're only 10k shields, mean you could have to drop more to survive than you would normally have to. But in the situation that they are useful, then yes, they're 25k shields compared to 15s. I still prefer the regular heals. If you want the counter heals, then go ahead and run them, but I prefer a consistent 15 over a possible 25, but most of the time 10. And then we have our grade 1s. First, we start up with our PGs at 4 of, and that is Custodial Dragon. Grade 1 boost, 5k or 0 shows 6k base. Continue to know you have 4 sounds of deck, and also put in guard circle. 2 music is up to hit the battle, and if you hand us 2 more cards, you can discard it. Standard PG does pass by, which means that this is only 1 card you hand is placed on guard circle. You don't have to discard 1, that's great, because that means you always discard if you want to use your early game. Okay, I went like full, sorry, my dad, I'm so sick right now that I was just talking gibberish for a second. But anyways, that means you can be as aggressive as you want in the early game, which in this case would be you get to grade 10, first grade 10 turn, you call board, you get about to 6 or 7 hand cards ish, so still pretty decent, and boom, now you have a good defensive amount, so when your opponent eventually counterattacks you, if your hand runs low and you only have 2 cards left, this being one of them, you don't have to discard 1, meaning you can make a counterattack with, I don't know, say that 1 card's a Persona Ride, or a card that can call stuff back, or an order. So all around, solid PG. You can make this plan prevent if you want, but I want to use this one because it's the newer PG, and I like to run the newer card with the newest cards possible, so solid 4 of Custodial Dragon for me. Then we have 4 copies of Breeze Abduction. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. I, for some reason, don't run him in Zorga, and yet I run him here. Auto rear guard, when the attack this unit boosts hits the Vanguard. Bind an order from your drop zone. Choose an order from your drop and put it to your hand. Okay, this deck kind of revolves around spamming orders to the extent of spamming out Roaming Prism Dragon, give it a constant crit, pray to God I see up front, and then make it so the entire front row has double crit with at least a front trigger on it. So having Breeze Abduction being able to, you know, get me orders back into my hand so I can constantly revive my dragons is pretty nice, and not to mention the fact that he can bind any order to bounce any order back, meaning the fact if I need to, say, for example, bounce back the Blitz order in my drop zone, I can get the Blitz order back for defensive capabilities, or if I need to bind the Blitz order to get the normal order back for next turn, I can do that. Solid grade 1, I like his ability. He is extremely versatile for what he can do, and he adds on-hit pressure to anything as long as he's boosting, so good 4 of. Then we have 4 copies of straight up the best and stupidest card in this deck, Performing Petal Diantha. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. Auto, which is placed on rear guard from your hand. If you have a Vanguard that's grade 3 or greater, grade 10, guaranteed. Counterblast 1, choose a grade 3 less card from your drop zone, call it to rear guard. Okay, sadly, she can't call Griphogila. Upside, Griphogila has no rear guard skill, so it doesn't really matter. And then continues rear guard during your turn. If you have 2 or more back row or grade 1 or less rear guards, she gets +5. So including herself, so that's almost a guaranteed 13. Being able to call anything back, so she can call herself, even though her ability won't go off after that. You can call Breeze Abduction. You can call this fucker who will get you more Dragontree markers if you really needed to, which I did have to do one game. You can call PG. All around, possibilities are endless with her. She's a solid grade 2. She gets you rear guard. She gets you numbers. 4 of Diantha. I don't know what to say about her. She helps you, I guess, make small comebacks and keep your board consistent. And then we have 4 copies of Dragontree Wretch, Bist Aiyatvas. I said Bist, not bitch, by the way. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, AK base. All of them is placed on rear guard. Counterblast 1. Choose one of your rear guards without any Dragontree markers on it. Put a Dragontree marker on it. Okay, solid. And then act rear guard once per turn. If your vanguard is a grade 3 or greater, by counterblasting 1 and soul blasting 1, choose a normal order from your drop zone, put it to your hand. Okay, now, there must be some of you out there never mind. I just now realized I probably can't do that because I'm actually going to go check the card right. Whoops. I'm going to go check the card right now to prove it. But the combo I was thinking of how you can get, multiple freaking Dragontree markers on a circle at once is if you use Bit Avarice in combinations with Wild Intelligence to counterblast 1 and essentially mill it into drop zone and then proceed to call it. And then, because it doesn't have to be placed from hand, because that's how I've been making most of my Dragontree markers, by calling this into drop, calling this, and then getting it back, and then remaking a Dragontree marker, and then, getting my Dragontree markers out. Sadly, I just checked Wild Intelligence, and it says you have to have a grade, or you have to call something with a grade lower than or equal to your Vanguard, meaning you cannot use him, but it is still fine. Being able to create Dragontree markers is okay as well, and then also, obviously, being able to return normal orders to your hand is also helpful. It's, you can spam out your roaming Prism Dragons more, and the best part about this deck's combo is you can call this, create a Dragontree marker, call Diantha on top of it, then use Diantha's skill, call right back, and get another Dragontree marker. I have done that twice in the same turn, meaning I got a total of 3 Dragontree markers. Granted, I used up all my CAB, but it was totally fucking worth it. So, for a bit Aiyatvas, it's just a solid grade 1, good card. Then we have our grade 2s. We start off with a Blitz order, and that is 1 copy of Fine Drink of Abolishment for Sins. God, sometimes I love the Zorga order names, and sometimes I just straight up hate them, like this one. So, grade 2, Blitz order, play it by Soul Blasting 1, which Soul is sometimes an important resource in this deck, so be careful. Draw a card, choose your use, I guess plus 5k for the turn, or for the battle, for each different order card in your drop zone and bind zone, increased by the total number of different card names. So, for the record, I don't think it counts itself, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but in case it doesn't, there's only 2 other orders in this deck that have different names, meaning that the fact the Vanguard is most likely going to get a 23, and sometimes it only gets 5. So, the order is decent when it needs to be. It can get you a hand card, and that's really what its main purpose is. But there are times where Ghost Chase might be better than this, but I do run this because there are occasions where it can get more than Ghost Chase. So, 1 of Fine Drink of Abolishment for Sins. Soul kind of balances it out. There are times where it's not that helpful, and there are times where it's better than Ghost Chase. It's up to you if you choose to run either of them, but I choose to run as a 1 of just in case, because sometimes you need to stall to the very last moment. And then we have 3 copies of Tearful Malice, a solid grade 2 order that helps me refill my Counterblast and Soul, and you can play it by killing 2 rear guards. It's a normal order, and then you draw a card, you put it to Soul, countercharge 1. Great. So here's what you do. You call 2 Prison Dragons, you kill them both, you draw a card, you send this to Soul, you countercharge, you call both dragons back, and you give them both a crit, and then you call 1 copy of this, you get another Dragontree marker, boom, now your entire farmer has extra crit on it. All around, Tearful Malice, saw a card, helps me increase my resources back, help me get my hand cards, help me get Soul, and help me make a better board that can possibly put on pressure to my opponent. All around, great order, I love it a lot. It has been one of my favorite orders since set 1, and it's still one of my favorite orders now, saw 3 of, and it's easily returnable via Bit Avarice, which kind of just makes it free. Then we have our grade 3s, because those were only grade 2s. Weirdly enough, we had no units that were grade 2s. I didn't realize this till now. And that would be our first grade 3. And there's another order, and that is Whales Melt in the Sound of Rain. If my voice wasn't hurting right now, I would do the joke that I would do in this voice, but I cannot do that. But I must say, though, this art is pretty cool in my opinion. Anyways, grade 3, normal order, 3 copies. Your opponent chooses 1 of their rear guards, murders it. Then you choose up to 1 of your cards with the same grade as the unit retired by your opponent, and you call it to rear guard. So from your drop zone, by the way. So, all around, pretty great. The downside is your opponent decides what you call, essentially. So if they kill, for example, a grade 0 and you don't have a grade 0 in drop, you can't call. But this is mainly here just to get a free rearguard kill on your opponent, and then also, you know, call back your roaming prison for free. Because originally what I thought this was is you pick one of any player's rearguards, but I didn't realize that that's not the case. Your opponent has to pick, but hey, still forcing your opponent to lose a rearguard, I'll take it. And you still don't have to call if you don't want to, but again, being able to call double prison dragons is good enough for me, and getting a free kill of opponent's rearguard, still good enough for me. Solid 3 of an order, it's just a good card. Then, speaking of which, we have 3 copies of Roaming Prison Dragon, aka the thing that makes this deck possible to have double crits. So, grade 3, 2.5%, or 5k base, not 13k base. 13 be way too broken for this card. Auto drop zone. When you play normal order, you may call this card to rearguard. And then if you call this card, you perform on the following. If it was by Alchemagic, perform on the following instead. So there's no way to Alchemagic in this deck, so you only get to do 1. And the 1 sometimes depends, but most of the time you always pick this one. Its abilities are either it gets plus 10, so it's a 15k, or the one you will most likely always pick gets a crit. So, you know, double critical, plus at least an 8k booster, while you have at least a Dragontree marker on this and the booster. So 13k plus 10, 23k, double critical, plus your Vanguard who probably has double crit. And if you have 2 of these on board and your opponent's at 2 damage, they're guarding 2 of these, and then every turn after this is going to be pure and utter hell for them. 3 of Roaming Prison Dragon. Never underestimate this deck, because the second you see 1 of these going to drop, you know trouble's coming, and if you see 2 of these going to drop, my boy, I pity you for what's about to come. Solid 3 of, do not mess with it. Then we have our last card in the deck, and that is 4 copies of Dragontree of Eclectic Decimation Griphogila, grade 10, Twin Dragon Persona, 13k base, continues Vanguard during turn. This unit gets plus 5k power for each tree mark on your rearguard circles, and if you have 3 more, it gets plus 1 crit. So great just by using Griphogil's ability, it's a free 23, and then if you use 1 bit Avarice ability, you get another one, meaning he's a 28k double critical, which is great. And if you have a full board Dragontree markers, he's a total of 38k double critical. And then plus, you know, the 13k booster, it's a 51k double critical. So all around, solid cards for that alone. Puts a lot of pressure on the opponent's Vanguard. And again, if you have at least 1 Roaming Prison Dragon, that's a guaranteed 2 attacks are constantly being blocked. And even if your opponent has PGs, they're still being forced down to throw PGs, with what will be an impressive final turn, because its other skill is Auto Vanguard. Once per turn, when this unit attacks into a Vanguard, by choosing a Face of Calamity card from your ride deck, you remove from the game. And then if you did not remove a card, you choose an over trigger from your ride deck, reveal it, activate all its trigger effects and additional effects. So you get the draw under a million, and then you get the additional trigger effect, meaning you get the another draw, a crit, a heal, a front trigger, and then you remove it from the game, and then you stand all of your rearguard Dragontree markers on them. So, say for example, on your final turn, you called 2 of these fuckers, because most likely you have 2 of them in your drop zone, and you call both of them. They have extra crits. Your opponent's at 4 damage. They're not walking away from this turn without taking a single hit. And if they do, your opponent has prepared this entire game for this one moment, and you have not done a good enough job of pressuring them out. Because double crit twice, and then the Vanguard, which also has double crit, and then restand the front row, and probably the back row too, and attack again with one of these fuckers having 1 million. That is 5 attacks with double critical. If your opponent walks away from this alive, you did not pressure them well enough, or they got fucking lucky. One of the two. Either way, Griphogila adds a lot of pressure, being able to do a board restand, getting an everything bagel on the final turn, and also being able to have constant pressure on the opponent's Vanguard while also having constant pressure on Roaming Prison Dragon. It just makes this deck very solid, very terrifying to stand down. If you end up having consistent problems with this deck, run an extra copy of Roaming Prison and either cut a copy of this or cut this entirely. It's really up to you. All around though, this deck can go a lot of different ways, and it's very fun the way it can go. It gets extra crits. You can build it around consistency with the calling. You can just build it around stalling out your opponent with retiring the rear guards. And I've yet to see other people play with this deck, but I can assume the many different ways you can probably figure out a way to abuse the fuck out of Stoicheia cards. So without further ado, I'm going to end it here before my voice dies on me. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, don't forget to follow Twitch, and I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to stand up your Vanguards.